Most doctors aren't trained to run a business, and that's okay, because you don't have to be. The MSO, or Management Services Organization, model lets you keep your focus on patients while giving the business side its own structure. It's simpler than most people realize, and it's often the difference between barely keeping the lights on and finally building a thriving practice. Today, I'll show you how it works and the key pitfalls to avoid so it actually helps rather than hurts. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that you probably don't like doing some things in your business. In fact, you might hate doing some things in your business. But I got good news for you. MSO, or Management Services Company or Organization, is the solution. Now, as a lawyer, I'll say, like most lawyers, I'm good at lawyering, but I may not be as good at running a business. And similarly, perhaps for you as a medical doctor, nurse practitioner, you went to school to practice medicine or do medical things. You didn't go to school necessarily to run a business, and that's okay. What an MSO does is it actually splits up the clinical stuff that you do well and all the business stuff for someone else to do. And then at the end of the day, you as the business owner can still make money. That's totally cool, but you've now delegated that out. This could be human resources, marketing, billing, all of the day-to-day administrative and management stuff that's not actual medical procedures, firing the laser, doing the plastic surgery, actually practicing medicine. Now, the reason we use management services organizations to begin with is because we can't just let random lay people or business investors who don't have a medical license own our medical practice. That's the corporate practice of medicine doctrine. So what you do is you have a separate company, a MSO or Management Services Organization, and you allow that company, which you can actually own if you want with other people, that's one model to do it, do all of the business stuff. And it's amazing when you start doing some of the things that you like and enjoy doing and are good at and delegate the rest, how quickly your company can grow. Certainly that's been my experience, is making sure that the right people are in the right seats. And just looking around at a lot of the other attorneys that are out there, I think they would agree with this. Excellent lawyers, terrible business people. And there's a big opportunity, I think, for lawyers to also use a very similar type to the MSO model. It works for all types of healthcare businesses. It's not just for big healthcare organizations or hospitals. Now, let's actually dig down into the biggest advantage for MSOs. It's compliance and protection. So picture this. You're a plastic surgeon. You're going through all day. You're working on, celebrities and what have you, making them beautiful. You come home at night, you're hanging out with your family, and you realize, hey, I got to run payroll and do a little marketing to keep this business going. And so you pull up some before and afters and of all the great work that you've been doing. You post it on social media, you go in, you click some things in QuickBook, and you try and run payroll. Now, it turns out that you did both of those things wrong. Turns out that you didn't have any sort of release or consent form to actually put that stuff on social media because you didn't really know exactly on the business and marketing side of things what to do. A perfect example of something you could have outsourced to an MSO. And then secondly, for the payroll, although you clicked stuff and did what QuickBooks told you to do, you accidentally misfiled and missed some taxes. Another thing that could have been outsourced to the MSO, the business side of things. So instead of having a lovely dinner with your family and just having the MSO take care of all that, you did surgery all day, came home, and then screwed up two things from a legal perspective, all of which could have been solved by just having an MSO. That's exactly what it's there for. So you as the clinician, the MD, the nurse practitioner, the medical practitioner are able to just do what you need to do. Also, fun fact, in California, for example, if you're not an MD, we are required to utilize some sort of MSO in order to have, for example, a nurse or another type of practitioner involved in the medical spa or medical practice under the corporate practice of medicine doctrine, requiring at least a 51% greater than 50% ownership of the medical practice. So these are just small examples of how to use it. So with compliance covered, let's switch gears here and let's talk about how MSOs actually unlock growth for your business. So here's why I think this is a cheat code. And if you're watching this, why I think you have a competitive advantage over those who don't know about an MSO. So an MSO is also a way that investors can come in and provide funding for your clinical entity. Now, the reason why the MSO is a little bit more attractive is because unlike just handing a loan to a clinical entity, this is a way for investors to actually profit and get a return on their investment, which is totally cool because you as the clinical owner are also going to grow with them. And so we're enabling more money to come in with that growth mindset in a legally compliant way that everyone does well, including the patients, because at the end of the day, you're given more breathing room to actually do more of the clinical work and not all of the marketing and the payroll and the administrative management day to day that MSO and those investors can come in and really being the experts in business can take over. This is especially important, and I think it's a cheat code if you're going to try to go from one location to 4 or 5, whatever, especially 2. It's expensive, right? You could bootstrap it and kind of save some money and slowly and methodically try and get into another space. But if you got a hot hand and you're also paying staff, right? So you might not have, 10,000, 100,000 just laying around to go to the next location, but you got a good brand that's growing. The MSO is a way to safely have investors come in and provide some of that funding. Now, I'll say this. MSOs aren't needed for every clinic, right? You may not be interested in having a bunch of investors come in or having that funding available, but certainly can still be used for the business side of things. And in my mind, I think is a no-brainer for anyone who doesn't have an MBA or didn't go into building a medical spa to become a business owner and marketer. So essential for growth, but also maybe case specific. But I'll tell you this, when handled correctly, an MSO isn't just a compliance tool. It's the legal engine that powers real growth. So now you understand how the MSO model fuels growth. Next, we'll zoom back into a specific risk, the legal landmines of using AI in your clinic. That's coming up in the next episode.